In this video, we're going to do a review of simplifying radicals. And before we can do that, we need to review some vocabulary terms. When you have a radical expression such as this, we have the radical sign, the radicand, which is represented as our x here, and the index, which is represented as n. Many times, we just see the radical and think square root, and when there's not an index listed, it is the square root, but we can take the root of many different indexes. We could do the cube root, the quartic root for 4, and so on and so forth. And so now let's look at simplifying this expression, the square root of 48. Our first step is to list all the factors of your radicand. And so I'm going to do this with a factor tree, breaking up 48 into 8 and 6. I'm going to break down 8 further into factors 2 and 4. And then I'm going to break 4 into 2 and 2. And what I mean by factors are the two numbers that multiply to give me a number. So 2 and 2 gives me 4, 4 and 2 gives me 8, 8 and 6 gives me 48. And then I'm going to break up 6 into 3 and 2. Next, I'm going to group the same factors. And when I talk about grouping, you want to make sure you group based on the index. And so in this case, our index is an assumed 2. And so we're going to have groups of two numbers that are the same. So this group, and then this group right here. Then I'm going to take one number from each group, and the ungrouped stays inside the radical. So in this one group, I'm going to pull out a 2, and in this group, I'm going to pull out another 2, and then this 3 is left inside my radical. This can be simplified to 4 times the square root of 3. And this is expressed in what's called radical form. You want to make sure we are reading directions carefully to any activities or assessments, and if it says leave in radical form, you can leave it with the radical symbol rather than take it into a decimal. Now for many of us, coming up with these factors is difficult when we get into higher numbers, and so there are calculator steps. So using this same expression, the square root of 48, I would take my calculator and I would go to the y equals screen and I would enter the radicand, so in this case it's 48, divided by x squared. Then I'll go to second graph to get a table of my different factors. The reason we have x squared and not x is this x, we are wanting to simplify it into simplest radical. We don't want just the list of factors. If I wanted just the list of factors, I would leave it as x. But we use x squared so that we can simplify using the calculator. So in the table, we're going to scroll through until we find the largest numbers for both x and y. And so if you can see, and I'll zoom in a little bit, and so you can see by our calculator, I have 1 and 48, 2 and 12, 3 and 5.333, 4 and 3. We typically want to use whole numbers, and so in this case the largest numbers for x and y are 4 and 3. When your numbers begin to get smaller than 1, you can stop. So once again, ours are 4 and 3. And so our answer for this, to simplify this expression, the square root of 48, can be expressed as the x, which is 4, from what we found on the table, and then inside the radical, what the y1 is when x is 4, which by our calculator was 3. And so using the calculator trick, we can do both for simplifying the radical.